All right, hey everybody. Anybody see the news today? There's something wrong with the world today, and I know that the airwaves are getting thin. How about a little eclipse action, Mercury retrograde, right setting for both the left and the right side, everybody? Tucker Carlson out on Fox, and then Don Lemon out on CNN. Both of them long-standing fixtures and upwards of 17 years for Don, and pretty much most of the 2000s for Tucker Carlson. He was a contributor once upon a time. But two once upon a time powerhouses are out. Two different stories, but it is the same astrology. Stay tuned with me here on the next. What's the name of my show? Oh yeah, The Stream of Consciousness. All right, guys, thanks again so much for joining me here. I want to talk to you a little bit about the astrology of what's going on here. Now, we have Mercury in retrograde. That's kind of a big deal, don't you think? But we're also in the eclipse season. There's a couple of very important things that are going on astrologically. And we'll take a look at Don's chart, and then we'll take a look at Tucker's chart. And I want to kind of show you that it's almost kind of the tale of two newscasters, two talking heads, if you will. The tale of two talking heads. I think I'm going to call it that. Fantastic, David Byrne notwithstanding. So let's kind of dive right in here. I'm going to actually pull up the whole Dominion voting thing here with Tucker Carlson, and I want to kind of set the stage that as much as people are talking about this being like a coincidental thing, it's pretty suspect to me that it would happen so close. Well, I'm going to tell you astrologically, it was absolutely 100% in the works for what it needed to be. You're going to want to go back and refer to the old Murdoch conversation that I had last week. But here we are. I want to actually jump into Don's chart, though. I'm going to start with Don, and then I'm going to go back into Tucker stuff. So let's take a look at Don's chart here. Now, we don't have his date or his time of birth, but we are going to default to a noon time, and I actually think it makes a ton of sense. Because realistically, being somebody in the spotlight the way that he is, his chart would read very similar to this. So I'm very comfortable about it. But notice how I'm not really talking about how the astrological, today's astrology acts upon his natal chart necessarily. But let me just point out some things. So let's talk about here in the inner wheel with the first house and the 12th house being connected to, say, the rising. Let's just show the fact that Jupiter and the moon are together here. They're in conjunction. So in his natal chart, he has this Gemini energy of both Gemini and the moon, or both Gemini, moon Gemini, and then Jupiter Gemini in conjunct here. That's squirrely energy to me. Oh, by the way, you also have Vesta here, which is about how he's going to learn his lessons. Well, it's going to be about personal reflection. That's the first primer that I want to talk about Don Lemon. Now, whether you think he's a good newscaster or not, you also have to recognize that some of the things that leak, you know that we're only getting, if we're lucky, half of the story, right? He's been this misogynistic kind of like, hey, what are you doing here? Being combative behind the scenes, challenged his own demons here. So this kind of makes a lot of sense that Jupiter in his 12th house, and again, I know we don't have the exact time, but this would make a ton of sense to me for that reason alone. The fact that his emotions might be torn apart by a very squirrely Gemini moon. And then let's just take a look at the 4th house. What congruently happens in the 4th house is this conjunct of Pluto and Uranus. Well, in the 4th house makes a lot of sense that he would create a family that is non-traditional, let's say. If you know Don's background, you understand why that makes sense. But it's also in Virgo, so there's kind of a self-righteousness to it. And there's also kind of the idea as in he has to wait to be justified in order to do the right thing. Well, guess what? Getting fired from I think he was getting paid $18 million a year. And by the way, CNN has done him a solid for the last 6-7 months at least, if not the last 3 years, when all of these challenges started to come up. They kind of moved him from one show to the other and blah, blah, blah. Truth be told, it's a horrible designed network. And now they're just trying to blame the actual talking heads, if you will. So this is kind of one of those things where it's like people might keep you around because they know you're just different. And maybe this is part of the reason why they kept him around, because he was so different. But now you take a look at the astrology in this guy and go ahead and look at, of course, the eclipse. Now I'm going back to the eclipse day because I'm telling you this is when all these decisions were made, right? You've got Jupiter in conjunct to the moon. Where have we seen this before? And of course, we have the eclipse energy to this. Now, astrologically, it's happening in the 11th house. This is the extended friends and family, right? This is where the things are kind of going to go sideways, where he's going to hit the reset button with how he extends to other people. Maybe they're doing Don Lemon a service here. Maybe there's that. Maybe there's that part of the conversation. And actually, I'm gonna go ahead and bring him up again, because I want to show his face, and there's a reason. We're gonna move him up. We're gonna move him up. One of the things that I always admired about him, I mean, first of all, his, whether you like his politics or not, I don't really care about that. But he always had a way about presenting who he was. And again, make no mistake that there's something to be said here with the left channel and the right channel having somebody canceled, right? Noise canceling, if you will. For those of you that understand the hi-fi editing work that I do after all the lights are off. Which, by the way, I fixed one of my lights, but doesn't really shine on there. No? Okay. All right. Anyways, so back on this with Don Lemon, he also has this Mercury conjunct to Uranus here. Now, again, can't get too far into the house placements, aside from that being in the sky. What happens when Uranus and Mercury come conjunct, and by the way, it goes retrograde, so it comes near and then it backs away. So this is all of the actions that are going on right now are going to have kind of that boomerang effect, right? For this reason, it is Uranus going, hey, I'm just going to kind of plod along here, and then you've got Mercury going, whoop, whoa, and guess what's going to happen? Mercury's going to catch up to it again. So this is kind of like a multi-chapter novel, right? A couple of episodes in, so to speak, right? Everything up until now was kind of the prequel. But when you see that, especially in Taurus, this is about your personal finances too. And I don't care what houses it comes in. Taurus is always going to have that reset of like your personal values of how it is that there was something incongruent with what CNN was talking about and what Don Lemon was talking about, right? Whether it was Don Lemon kind of behaving poorly or whether it was CNN being structured and run poorly, both are accurate here, I think, right? So that's kind of a look at why it is. And listen, he's got his Saturn set. All of this has everything to do with Saturn in Pisces, by the way. Everything. All of this has to do with Saturn in Pisces in one way or another. As a matter of fact, I'm going to pull that up right now. I think it's on this. I think I have it on this one. Well, maybe I don't. But anyways, Saturn in Pisces means up is down and down is up. So your structure is becoming undone in a way that's very necessary for you to grow, for you to learn your lessons, and for you to be able to expand afterwards, right? So this 3-year period is going to be dicey for some more than others. And by the way, some of those that have dodged those bullets for a while, guess what? Here it comes, baby. It's going to show up. Don Lemon got his at 4 degrees Pisces, right? Saturn knocks on the door. All right, everybody out of the pool. But listen, did you ever think that Don Lemon... I'll make the joke later, but did you ever think that Don Lemon and Tucker Carlson were going to be so connected? I mean, come on. Here at the end of the day, I don't think anybody thought that. So I'm going to do the same courtesy here of Tucker Carlson. And by the way, I don't want to get into the politics of it, but Tucker Carlson has his bad behavior has kind of come to the surface. See what I did there? So Tucker Carlson actually has kind of been a jerk. He's kind of been that jerk behind the scenes. He's been a jerk to our president. He's been a jerk to, and by the way, I don't care about your politics. I'm just calling it like I see it. He's been doing things behind the scenes like trying to get fact checkers fired. He's trying to be like, oh yeah, sure, that's great. Lie like hell on screen. Even say he's lying like hell on screen so then he can get away with it. Now, the skullduggery that goes on behind the scenes at Fox has really kind of come to the surface. And a lot of people think that the Dominion settlement actually hid a lot of that. I think that Tucker Carlson getting canned is actually one of the symptoms coming out. Like Don Lemon being fired from CNN is a symptom of it being poorly run for decades, right? Fox News has had this agenda-driven conversation. And quite frankly, there were moments where Tucker Carlson said, this is BS. Hold on a second. I just defended Tucker Carlson a little bit, and I'm about to show the astrology as to why. But Tucker Carlson, whether you like him or not, has some sincere principles in his value. But don't ever think for a second that he's not about himself. So a couple of things just in a chart analysis, and I didn't circle too much in this just so that we didn't distract. Don't worry, I circle things in the next one. It is very interesting. So for him, he is in what is known as, I believe this is going to be a waxing Gibbons moon. He is a Gemini. He is connected. Remember all that Captain Chaos with Mars and Gemini? You know how, like, when Mr. Donald Trump, like, went completely haywire over the last, like, 4.5, like 6 months almost, and he was just like Mr. Crazy Pants and the whole 9 yards. Well, guess what? He has that in his natal sign. He's also very strong in his 11th house, which means he's able to network. He's able to convince people. And by the way, his Mercury also in Gemini. No kidding. Look at that. You can lie, Tucker Carlson. It's in your chart. It's in your chart. And by the way, not everybody that's a Gemini is a liar. However, you do have the ability to twist, fold, bend, and mutilate in whatever way it is that you need to get what you need if you're in survival mode. So if Tucker Carlson is in survival mode, it is him. Let's see. Here's his priorities. Him, and then after that, it's him. And then after that, it's him. Fair enough? Because his moon is a very wide conjunct to his Venus. Venus is in conjunct with the sun. And Mars is also in conjunct with the sun. So he's kind of at battle with himself. So he's probably the type of person that's going to flip in a regular sense, in a regular way, normally. Like his state of affairs are, who wants me to say what? He will do anything to be your friend. But don't expect him to be a loyal one, because Geminis kind of run that way, where it's whatever is the most convenient. Now, the other aspect that I really want to point out here is how his Saturn is sitting in his 10th house, means that in his 10th house might be that he's a little angry and trying to prove himself to people all the time. See also every newscast he's ever done. And by the way, he uses a technique that makes you logically think that he's smart because of how he uses logic. But all he's trying to do is say, you don't really have an option but to think the way that I think. And you'll see a lot of like pundits do this. You'll see a lot of evangelicals do this. It's kind of like in the void of a vacuum with only the facts I've given you, this is the truth. And as soon as you interject other things, they're so worried defending any outside facts that they don't allow the truth to actually come to the future. They come to the feature here. They actually want you to believe in the paradigm that they're creating. So a little disillusion there. And also he thinks that he has to be the one to show you. You know, he's that scene, you know, that scene in Coneheads where somebody comes up with something and they're like, oh, you know, I have to get this to the supreme leader. And then, you know, the David Spade character takes it and goes, yeah, he's not feeling good today. Let me share that with him, right? That's kind of who he is, right? So he's a little bit of a sniveler. The other thing is that Jupiter in Leo in his second house is huge. And I'm going to show you how it's playing out with the current astrology right now. But Jupiter in Leo is go big or go home. It's a fire sign on fire sign, right? You've got Jupiter being the Sagittarius, front runner here with this. And then the 9th house action, the Sagittarius action, the Leo energy, the drive. So he's very driven. By the way, he's only been married once, which would make a lot of sense with this. And that it's kind of like either it's me or nobody. He also has Pluto and Uranus in conjunct of one another in his communication house. What does that mean for somebody in the news industry? Everything. he's prone to lie. By the way, that's opposite of his third house where his lesson is sitting with Vesta and Chiron and Eris. He's the one that's going to rattle the saber. It's in his chart, guys. It's literally in his chart. So he's going to create a rebellion, his own set of truths, and communicate them in a way, right? Pluto, the power. Uranus, the rebellion. What a prick. I'm sorry, was that my outside voice? Anyways, let's go ahead and take a look at him against the eclipse. Oh, look at this. By the way, I unintentionally drew a little penis there, so sorry. Anyways, now that the 12-year-old session is done, the 12-year-old Brandon, I'm going to take this actually from the top. I want to take a look at the 11th house, and again, this is where, remember that conflict that he has in his natal chart with Venus and Mars, where it's kind of pulling on the sun on either side of him? Well, guess what? Venus is coming over this, and he is going to be practical about him. He's going to be incredibly selfish. By the way, don't forget, behind the scenes, he's actually talking quite a bit about, what are you guys doing? You need to fire people. This is terrible for our stock price. Blah, 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 blah. Right? By the way, I'm filming this about 4.5 hours after it was announced that he was no longer on the channel. I am going to guarantee to you what he has open on his phone are different stock tickers to see how much the Fox stock is dropping. Guarantee it. That's the only thing this dude cares about and what is mattering to his portfolio. And I will also guarantee to you that he also has a deal behind the scenes to make sure that he gets his money. By the way, it's also in mitigation phase. He's not going to say a damn thing for about another 6 to 10 years. And that's okay. So, because it's all about his money right here. It's in the 11th house. How can I take it from my friends and family? By the way, he stole from you by lying to you, just to let you know, Fox and friends. Now, let's take a look at this somewhat kind of a lot of penises here. So anyways, over his Saturn, right, you have Jupiter coming in. That conflict, we're going to talk more about that here in a second. We've got that conflict kind of doing one of these. You've, of course, got the eclipse energy with the moon and the sun kind of doing one of these. And then you've got this shadow thing of showing people who they are. I have one more thing on here that I haven't circled, and I'm going to get back to it here, and it's in between the two of these things. See if you can pick it up at home. I talked about with Don Lemon. So you've got this dynamic in the 10th house, and look at his Chiron. Look at Chiron sitting in the 9th house for him. This is about lessons. Oh, by the way, Neptune is sitting in his 9th house as well, over his Chiron. Somebody needs to tell the truth. The illusion is over for his healing. Is there hope for Tucker Carlson? I don't know. He didn't start out this bombastic dickhead. But he's always been prone to exaggerate. He knows how to present the story. He's a good storyteller. There's nothing wrong with that. But when the narrative doesn't fit the story you want to tell, you don't get to change it, brah. I hope that makes some sense. Now, over here in the 6th house, I'm gonna save the Jupiter thing here for a second until the end. You've got Pluto in Aquarius. By the way, it goes retrograde in a little bit. We got about another 4 or 5 weeks here. Then we go retrograde. That's going to go back over into his friendship stuff. And guess what? That dude is going to feel it. He is going to see his relationships fall apart. Right now, he's all about the stuff around him. So this is a great time for him to be selfish. Now, before I get to the big, long cigar in the center of it, I want to bring it back up to the 10th house where Uranus and Mercury are in conjunct. Remember, I brought this up with Don Lemon. For him, it also happened in the 10th house. Well, the rebellion of his communication is in the spotlight. It's basically ruined whatever career he has. Now, we all know that Tucker Carlson can start his own YouTube channel tomorrow and probably be relatively successful. He might even be on Pluto TV for all I know. But in the scheme of things, his big-time paycheck was very publicly outed. And now that it's gone into retrograde, I think that this is just the beginning of the waterfall effect of all the things that Tucker Carlson has done. You know, based on even the things that have been leaked, I mean, is it a little unsavory? Sure. But you kind of have to defend the guy that's behind the scene going, we got to cut this crap out. You know, this Donald Trump is bringing us down a path we don't want to go on. He was actually defending Fox in that time, whether you realize it or not. So there's something to this. Now, he also has another lawsuit about some harassment stuff. And those of you that ever saw the Bill O'Reilly stuff that went on know full well that Fox, that's the third rail at Fox. As soon as, what's his name, Bob Ailes, also moved on in another kind of unsavory way. So maybe this is more about Tucker Carlson getting called to task about a staff member that has alleged some things. I'm not trying to defend him, and I'm certainly not going to. He has a history, we'll just say it that way. So we're not trying to defend him here. But you can't help but notice how much money Fox is paying people to get rid of them. So this, I think, has a lot to do with what he has, and I think he might have them in checkmate. And then I think Fox might have him in checkmate by basically being like, listen, we have each other, in a gunfight. If you're both holding the gun against each other, it's who pulls the trigger first, but nobody wants to do it. That's kind of the feel I get with this, where they're at a stalemate, and this was the thing. And here is the astrology of it. Take a look at the 8th and the 2nd house. You want to know what makes Tucker Carlson tick? Let me tell you something right now. You have got Jupiter in Leo, in his natal, and then you have Pisces. Saturn in Pisces, in opposition here, right? The 2nd house to the 8th house. And again, I know it's not in full opposition here, but look at how it lines up. One is dominating the 8th house, and it's the only thing in it. Saturn is sitting there going, hey, listen, up is down and down is up. The things that you thought were solidified are no longer there in your house of other people's money. Jupiter is sitting in his 2nd house, the Turinian house, his personal finances, his own integrity, right? There are glimpses of this that I think Tucker Carlson, quite frankly, has been 100% correct to call out Fox. There, I said it. But don't think for a second he wasn't angling to get paid for what he believed in. You want to throw a few more things on top? Why don't we have Lilith move over Jupiter here, his natal Jupiter? And by the way, over the following couple of days, we're a few days away, Lilith moved over his natal Jupiter right here in the 2nd house. So guess what? He's trying to heal something here. And again, I'm not defending him, but there's kind of some hope for Tucker Carlson. I have to say it that way, because I got to call it like I see it. I don't appreciate his politics, and I know that he is a warmonger, and I know that he's a war profiteer, quite frankly. But is there hope? Dare I say yay? I also think he has the opportunity to really become who he's meant to be. Pay attention to probably late August, where Mercury will move into the 1st house for him. And it will also really project, and again, it will be a Leo placement for him. And maybe this is when he fights back. So it's going to take a few months, as it should. And you're also going to see things like Pluto be back in Capricorn. You're also going to see, and for him, it's going to be in the 7th house. So he's going to have some fist fights to have. Look for his axe to be grinded, say in, like I said, August, September, right? I also think that when he moves himself to a place to recant certain things and then go after other things, I think a lot of people are going to side with him because they're going to see him as being the virtuous one. Because the things that Fox have coming is just, there will not be there will not be another Super Bowl on Fox after this next one. Like, I think this is it. I think this is the crowds are going home. Nobody's going to stick around. Nobody's going to be like, ugh. Forget about who Budweiser has as their support or spokespeople. Forget about any of the parts about Hunter Biden's fucking laptop. I'm sorry, but get over it, guys. Either charge him or don't. And if he did something wrong, he should be charged and held accountable, not Papa Biden coming in here and telling him he's okay. Let's all drink the truth serum. This is your opportunity to drink the truth serum here, Tucker. Go drink it. Hunter, go drink it. There's perpetuality in getting paid by riling people up. I mean, Hunter Biden's laptop was literally in 86% of their broadcasts. You can fact check me on that, because they published something about how many days they actually brought up Hunter Biden's laptop. And it wasn't just Tucker Carlson. It was everybody across Fox. Like, I don't know how much Tucker did. But that tells me something. It tells me that there was literally no movement to anything in his case. And it has been investigated. And there have been questions. But for whatever reason, Fox News felt the need to bring it up 86% of the time. What does that tell you about somebody who is in it for himself? Tucker? There is a sincere fight here that's going on. And even though this is a wide opposition of Jupiter and Saturn, it's very real for him. This man's life is about to crumble behind the scenes. Astrologically, you can say, oh, this isn't good. Or personally, you can say this isn't good. But astrologically, you're like, okay, well, this is part of a bigger plan. I actually find a lot of value in Don Lemon and Tucker Carlson. I thought Don Lemon had a way with words. I didn't really care for his politics, but whatever. But he was right to me more often than not. I think Tucker Carlson is actually a really good storyteller. Unfortunately, he just made up the shit in his head, and with various facts that were never really checked. And can we also bring up the fact that Dan Rather stepped down after a prolific 50-year career because he didn't get one thing right in one part of his story? And he held himself to the accountability to be able to, like, step down? Maybe that's the next chart I have to do. But Dan Rather did one fraction of this. There was a Supreme Court justice in 1962 or something that stepped down because he took a payment from somebody, from a corporation that he had been on the board with. And he didn't want the improprieties to ever get in the way of the work of the justice, so he resigned. Nobody was calling for his resignation. It was an equal-partied measure to be like, we should really look at this, but nobody was calling for his resignation. And he resigned anyways because he said, my moral ethics need to go this way, and I need to step down. I would expect any of my colleagues to go do this. Meanwhile, we have Clarence Thomas receiving ridiculous amounts of kickback and benefit with Republican donors. And again, I'm not picking a side. I'm just saying, watch these dominoes fall. Watch them fall. Today was Don Lemon and Tucker Carlson. Tomorrow, this Pluto return is a big deal here in the United States. It's time to tell the truth and nothing but. All right, guys, thanks again for joining me. Join me again. Be sure to click like and subscribe. Make sure you share with your friends. And if you really like the channel, become a member. Subscribe and go ahead and join our back channel here. We really appreciate it. And I'm going to give you the heart tap. We're going to give freedom a heart tap today. We're going to give the truth in advertising a heart tap. And we'll see you guys here soon. Keep going.